Elias' heart stepped off the landing ramp and felt the warm golden air of Cytherian brush across his face. He had seen many planets in his career, but this one felt different. The sky shimmered with soft colors that shifted slowly like gentle waves of paint. Tall structures made of crystal and metal stretched above him, glowing with internal light. Everything looked polished, advanced, and almost dreamlike. Elias told himself he was not here as a tourist or admirer. But he could not deny the feeling that this world was breathtaking. He had been chosen as Earth's representative for a cultural alliance. The Scythery Empire was one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations known, and until recently, they kept contact with humanity limited. Suddenly, that changed. They invited Earth as a potential partner, and Elias was the one selected for this diplomatic exchange. Many believed he had been chosen because of his calm nature and composed manners. Others whispered that Princess Vishara herself had requested him. No one confirmed that, but it made Elias smile, because he secretly hoped it was true. A group of Sithari awaited him at the end of the ramp. Their tall, elegant forms gave an impression of ancient nobility. Their skin carried soft, metallic colors that shifted with emotion. Their clothing resembled flowing robes that caught the light and scattered it like glitter. They bowed in perfect coordination. One stepped forward, and Elias recognized her immediately. Princess Vishara. She carried herself with confidence, but not arrogance. Her eyes had a depth that made Elias feel seen rather than judged. She smiled gently and offered a greeting in perfect English. "Welcome to Cytherian, Envoy Hart. We are honored to receive you." Elias returned the bow and answered with practiced diplomacy, though he struggled to hide his genuine excitement. "The honor is mine. Earth looks forward to building something meaningful with your people." Vishara studied him with curious eyes. "I believe we will." It was a simple sentence, but something in her tone made Elias's heartbeat change. It almost felt personal. He reminded himself that diplomacy could make anyone sound enthusiastic. Still, he allowed the warm feeling to remain. The princess led him across a walkway suspended high over the shining city below. Flying transports glided through the air with silent engines. Hundreds of Sithari citizens moved through crystal streets, dressed in robes of soft colors. Music seemed to float from the buildings themselves. The air smelled faintly of sweet fruit and unfamiliar flowers. Elias felt as if the planet were welcoming him with open arms. He was shown to the guest palace, a structure carved from a single enormous crystal that sparkled in the shifting light. Servants guided him through wide halls filled with art and historical displays. One chamber showed murals of ancient Sithari history victories, discoveries, and tragic losses. Elias paused at a large depiction of robed figures standing beside machines that looked like medical chambers. "Your people had a period of difficulty?" Elias asked gently, noticing the somber expressions carved into the art. Vishara nodded. "Our past held many challenges. We endured loss, struggled for survival, and sought new ways to preserve our future." There was sadness in her voice. Elias felt a wave of sympathy. Humanity understood struggle. Their own history was full of wars, disease, and rebuilding. Perhaps this alliance was something that both species needed. He was given a personal dining hall for a welcoming meal. It was far more extravagant than necessary. A long table displayed fruits that glowed faintly under the lights, dishes with scents that made his stomach growl, and crystalline glasses filled with a cool blue drink. Musicians played soft tones from strange instruments that resonated like distant bells. Yet the strange thing was that Elias was not joined by other diplomats. Only Vishara sat with him. He wondered if this was custom, or something else entirely. She spoke to him not like a political figure, but like someone who wanted to talk about dreams and future hopes. She asked about Earth, about humanity's struggles, about what people wished for when they looked at the stars. Elias felt himself relax. She was unlike any royal figure he had ever encountered. She listened with real interest. She laughed softly at his humor, She seemed to understand his concerns without needing long explanations. He began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was forming a connection beyond duty. As the dinner ended, Vashara walked with him through a garden filled with tall bioluminescent plants. Firefly-like insects drifted lazily through the air, leaving streaks of light behind them. Elias had never seen anything like it. The environment felt peaceful and almost magical. "You speak with honesty," she said quietly, "and I find that rare in the stars." "I could say the same." Elias smiled. "Most ambassadors I meet speak only to win, not to understand." She stopped and looked up at the sky, where a bright moon glowed above the crystal towers. "Our people value bonds. If two sides do not understand one another, cooperation is only an illusion." Elias felt his heart shift slightly. It was easy to forget why he was here. The treaty they were working toward was important for Earth. Joining with such an advanced civilization could open doors to technology, knowledge, and galactic respect. But in that moment, Elias was not thinking about politics. He was thinking about how close Vashara stood beside him, how her voice held sincerity rather than formality. Was he falling for someone from another world? He pushed the thought away. He was a diplomat, professional, responsible. But Vashara's presence made that discipline weaker than usual. The next morning, Elias woke to find that the city had prepared an enormous public celebration. Floating banners displayed Earth's symbol next to Cytherian's imperial crest. Thousands of Sithari citizens lined the streets. They cheered and waved as Elias passed in a sleek, open vehicle. He saw children tossing glowing petals, musicians playing joyful notes, and dancers performing movements that flowed like water. It was overwhelming. Elias had never seen humanity given such high honor by another species. He felt pride swelling inside him. For the first time, he believed that this alliance could become something powerful for both sides, something truly historic. At the end of the parade, he stepped onto a stage overlooking the city. Vashara stood beside him, her posture royal and poised. The crowd quieted as she spoke. "Today marks the beginning of a new bond between our civilizations. May trust guide our future, and shared vision strengthen our path." Elias followed with his own speech, trying to keep his voice steady despite the intense emotion around him. He talked about learning from one another, helping each other, and approaching the future with open hearts. The crowd responded with thunderous applause. Elias felt heat in his chest. Yes, this was the start of something beautiful. He looked over at Vashara and saw her watching him with a small, knowing smile. He wondered if she saw him the same way he was beginning to see her, not just as a symbol of diplomacy, but as a person worth trusting. He believed he was finding connection. He believed he was building a relationship. He believed he might even be discovering love in a distant star system. He did not yet know the truth that while he thought he was entering a partnership, the Sithari leadership believed he had already agreed to something far more serious. But for now, Elias had no reason to question the dream he was living. The world felt honest, the princess felt sincere, and the future seemed bright. He stood beneath the glittering sky of Cytherion, unaware that behind the smiles, ancient plans were already in motion, and his role in them was far greater than he imagined. Elias' heart woke to the sound of ceremonial bells echoing through the crystal palace. The light that filled his guest chamber was soft and golden, reflected through the glass-like windows. Today was meant to be the most important diplomatic day of his career. The official treaty ceremony would take place at noon, and once the documents were signed, Earth would become the newest ally of the Sithari Empire. Elias stood before the mirror, adjusting the formal uniform Earth had given him. He saw a man trying not to smile too widely, but he could not help it. Everything he had seen so far, the celebrations, the warm welcome, the private conversations with Princess Vashara, made him believe something remarkable was happening. He walked through the palace halls, escorted by two polite Sithari guards. Servants bowed as he passed. Every decorative wall, every glowing pillar, seemed to remind him that the future was waiting behind one simple signature. The guards led him to a balcony, overlooking the city. Elias rested his hands on the railing. From this height, the entire capital spread across the horizon like a garden of shining towers. He saw thousands of citizens preparing for another public celebration. It humbled him. Humanity had never been honored on such a scale by another species. As the morning passed, representatives from other star nations began to arrive. Elias met ambassadors from civilizations he had only heard of in historical files. They spoke with interest about humanity's sudden rise to the galactic stage. Elias answered with modest confidence, proud of his world and the progress it had made. Still, he felt that one thing mattered more than technology or influence. Humans were finally stepping into the stars, not as servants or silent guests, but as equals. Before the ceremony, Elias was invited to a private meeting room with several high-ranking Sithari officials. The chamber was quiet, decorated with paintings of ancient Sithari rulers. The officials spoke kindly, praising the courage and strength of Earth. They told Elias that this partnership would benefit both civilizations, and that they admired humanity's determination. Elias thanked them, believing every word was part of genuine diplomacy. Yet, there were moments when he noticed the officials sharing glances, almost relieved, as if something heavy was about to be lifted from their shoulders. Elias ignored the small discomfort. He assumed it was simple nervousness over a historic alliance. Unknown to him, those looks meant something else entirely. Finally, the time came for the grand signing. Elias was guided into the ceremonial hall, a massive open space with towering crystal pillars. The floor shimmered like polished water, reflecting the lights above. Thousands of guests filled the chamber, dressed in elaborate robes. Every seat faced a central stage, where a long table had been prepared. The treaty, printed in both Earth Standard and Sithari script, rested on its surface. Princess Vishara stood waiting, dressed in a robe of silver and pale blue. She looked calm, proud, and serene. Elias felt his heart jump slightly. If he had met her under different circumstances, he might have forgotten he was a diplomat at all. But he reminded himself that his duty came first. A bond between their two civilizations mattered more than personal feelings. Vishara stepped forward and spoke loudly enough for the entire assembly to hear. She spoke of unity, future cooperation, and mutual progress. Her words carried a depth that made the hall silent with respect. Elias followed with his own speech, expressing Earth's hope that this treaty would mark the beginning of shared growth. The audience applauded with enthusiasm. Elias sat down, believing everything was exactly as it should be. The ceremony continued. Several Sithari officials added legal explanations, describing the treaty in great detail. Elias listened politely, thinking most of the finer points had already been covered in the delegation meetings. He was ready to sign. He reached for the ceremonial pen just as his personal diplomatic AI assistant, hidden in the lapel of his uniform, beeped quietly. A small translated window appeared on the inside lens of his contact interface. The AI's voice whispered in his ear, barely audible. Warning. Treaty translation contains additional clauses not previously disclosed. Elias froze. He glanced down at the document again. The Sithari text contained a long section that was not included in the earlier drafts Earth had reviewed. His AI quickly translated the missing portion. Elias felt a chill run down his spine as the meaning became clear. The treaty did not describe equality. It did not describe cultural partnership. It described something else entirely. The clauses stated that humanity was being selected for genetic integration and biological stabilization programs. It explained that Earth's population would be gradually included in a long-term reproduction project intended to restore the biological future of the Sithari species. It continued further. describing how humans would be transported, enrolled, and monitored. Nowhere in the document did it mention voluntary participation. It was assumed as a duty of their new partnership. Elias could not believe what he was reading. He scanned the treaty again, hoping he misunderstood. But the text was clear. This was not an alliance. It was a recruitment order disguised as an international agreement. The cheering crowds, the celebrations, the warm greetings, all of it was meant to hide the truth until the signing was complete. Princess Vishara leaned toward him and spoke softly. "Envoy Hart, you may complete your signature." There was no malice in her voice. She sounded genuinely calm. Elias looked at her, searching for some sign of deception. He found nothing cruel in her expression, only expectation. Yet the reality remained. She had known this all along. Whether she believed it was right, or whether she believed he would simply accept it, Elias could not tell. His pulse pounded in his ears. Humanity had been tricked. Their representatives did not realize that the Sithari language used poetic terms for reproduction. Where humans read alliance, the Sithari read genetic union. Where humans saw progress, the Sithari saw survival. The translations had masked everything. Elias stood up slowly, and the entire hall went silent. Thousands of eyes focused on him. He knew that one wrong move could start a diplomatic disaster. But he also knew he could not sign away his species' freedom. He forced his voice to remain steady. "Before I sign, I request clarification on Article 17 and its implications." The officials exchanged nervous looks. One stepped forward and answered smoothly. "It simply confirms the long-term cooperation of your species with ours." Elias pressed the point. "Cooperation in what form?" The official hesitated. "In biological continuation." There it was, stated openly, as if it were a normal diplomatic term. Elias felt his hands tighten. Millions of humans back home had no idea that Earth was moments away from being turned into a mandatory genetic resource. He took a breath. "On Earth, we do not sign agreements without informed consent. This clause is unacceptable. Humanity will not be forced into anything." A murmur spread across the chamber, shock mixed with concern. Vishara stepped closer, her brows drawn with confusion rather than anger. "You object?" "Yes," Elias answered firmly. "I object." The room became heavy with silence. Officials whispered, unsure of how to react. They had expected Earth to agree without question. They believed humanity was desperate for recognition in the galaxy and would accept any price. They were wrong. Elias stood tall, refusing to step back. The ceremony continued to hang in the air, frozen and incomplete. He did not know what the next hour would bring: anger, negotiations, or conflict. But he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not surrender its freedom in exchange for a seat at someone else's table. Elias Hart stood in the center of the ceremonial hall, surrounded by shocked officials, confused diplomats, and thousands of silent Sithari witnesses. His rejection of the treaty had shattered the perfect celebration the Empire had prepared. For the first time since arriving on Cytherian, he was alone in his thoughts, standing against a system that expected him to bow quietly. The Scythari officials exchanged hurried whispers, clearly struggling to decide how to respond. They had not prepared for resistance. They believed humans would accept anything for the chance to join the galactic elite. Princess Vishara slowly stepped forward. Her expression was calm on the surface, but Elias saw the tension behind her eyes. She reached out with a reassuring gesture, as though she could still guide the situation back to peace. "Envoy Hart," she said softly, "please understand. Our people are desperate. This is not slavery. It is survival." Elias kept his voice steady. "Survival does not excuse forced participation. You never told us what this treaty truly was. You expected us to sign without knowing the truth. Some of the crowd murmured in disapproval not at Elias, but at his defiance. The Sithari Empire had not revealed the extent of its genetic crisis publicly. Many civilians in the audience were now learning for the first time what the treaty truly meant. They looked startled, worried, even ashamed. A senior minister stepped forward, their metallic skin shifting with frustrated colors. Humanity has been selected for this honor. This partnership benefits both species. Your refusal is unreasonable. Elias straightened his uniform, drawing himself up to his full height. My refusal is the only reasonable response. Humans will not be used without consent. That simple sentence triggered a wave of anger from several officials. Guards stepped closer, hands hovering near their sidearms, unsure whether to take Elias into custody. He saw the situation spiraling out of control. If he remained silent, the Sithari leadership would simply classify Earth as disobedient and take action. If he fought alone, he would be removed quietly, and the treaty would continue without him. He needed backup. Without moving his lips, Elias activated a discreet voice command through the tiny AI interface hidden in his collar. Code 9. Execute contingency plan. His message shot silently through quantum encryption channels, faster than any normal communication. Several seconds passed, with no outward sign of change. Elias faced the hall, refusing to show fear. If Earth did not respond, he would be standing alone against one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Then something changed. The great crystal windows of the ceremonial hall flickered as an enormous shadow passed overhead. The crowd looked upward, startled. A sleek black ship had descended from the sky with silent engines, an Earth vessel, completely invisible to sensors until the moment it chose to appear. It was smaller than most Sithari warships, but its design was striking. Angular, dark, and smooth, with the Earth diplomatic crest glowing along its hull. Whispers and gasps filled the chamber. Elias kept his eyes forward. The ship was not a warship. It was a Black Ops diplomacy vessel, created for the express purpose of extraction, without conflict. It carried no heavy weapons, but its defenses and electronic warfare systems were years ahead of anything the Sithari believed humanity possessed. The lights in the hall flickered, and Elias heard a small chime inside his contact interface. His AI spoke in a controlled whisper. Quantum link established. Support assets active. Extraction possible on request. Elias felt a wave of relief, but he kept his posture firm. This was not the moment to run. This was the moment to show the galaxy that humanity could not be bullied into submission. He addressed the hall. Earth did not come here as a subject. We came as partners. But if partnership requires deception and forced compliance, then we will decline. The senior ministers' faces shifted with outrage and panic. One slammed a hand on the table. This is unacceptable. You will sign. The treaty has already been witnessed. The process must be completed. Elias looked calmly at him. Then your process is flawed. A whisper ran through the hall. The guards looked unsure. Some civilians looked troubled, others impressed. Humanity was doing something the Sithari had not expected, refusing politely and standing firm. A loud tone echoed through the chamber. Then, a holographic projection appeared over the stage. A transmission signal, activated by Elias's hidden ship. The projection displayed a secure galactic broadcast channel. A synthetic voice began to speak in perfect Sithari translation. Message from Earth Diplomatic Intelligence Division. No interstellar agreement involving humanity is valid without transparent consent. Any attempt to transport, conscript, or enroll human citizens without direct approval from Earth's government will be treated as a violation of galactic law and sovereign rights. The crowd erupted into noise. Some shouted in anger, others in confusion. The Sithari leadership had planned everything, down to the seating arrangements and lighting. But they had underestimated something fundamental. Humans did not go quietly. Vishara waved her hands, calling for silence. Her voice rose above the argument. There is no need for threats. We are not invaders. We are not enslavers. We seek unity. Elias faced her directly. Unity that begins with deception is not unity. If you had told us the truth, perhaps we could have discussed it openly. But you hid the real purpose of the treaty. You expected us to agree without understanding. The princess looked hurt, not angry. Elias could see the sincerity in her eyes. She truly believed she was helping her people. She truly believed that humanity would be willing to contribute once the truth was known. But that sincerity did not change the deception. The senior minister interrupted sharply. Remove Envoy Hart from the chamber. He will be detained until negotiations resume in a more controlled environment. Several guards moved forward. Elias remained calm. If they took him, his mission and Earth's freedom would be compromised. Before they reached him, the Earth ship dropped a shimmering beam of light, creating a protective barrier around Elias. The guards stopped short, unable to cross. The hall filled with shocked exclamations. The minister slammed a crystal fist on the table. You bring weapons into a treaty ceremony? Elias stared him down. No weapons. Just boundaries. The minister looked ready to order an attack. But Vishara stepped between them, holding up a hand. Her voice cut through the hall. Stop! No one here will harm a guest of Cytherian. The guards froze. Vishara turned to Elias. Her voice was quiet but urgent. Please do not escalate this further. Our empire is wounded. Our population is declining. The genetic program was seen as our last hope. Elias sighed softly. I understand your desperation. But forcing another species to carry your burden is not the answer. If you want humanity's help, ask for it honestly. Do not take it by trick. The minister protested. Humans would never agree if we told them the truth. Elias met his gaze. You never gave us the chance to try. A tense silence followed. The entire chamber watched Elias, unsure how the situation would end. If humans stayed and fought, there would be war. If Elias ran, diplomacy would collapse. But humanity was not here to make threats, they were here to set terms. Elias placed one hand on the shining table. We will return to Earth. We will report what we have learned. Then, if your empire still wants cooperation, we can negotiate a real treaty. One based on choice. Vishara looked at him with a mix of sadness and respect. She bowed her head slightly. Then, go with honor. Elias triggered the extraction command. The Earth ship opened a portal of shimmering blue light. As the guards looked on in frustration and awe, Elias stepped into the beam. The hall watched as his figure vanished in an instant, leaving the Scythari leadership to face the consequences of their failed deception. When Elias materialized aboard the Earth ship, he exhaled slowly. He had just challenged a 1,000-year-old empire without a single shot fired. Humanity had shown the galaxy something important. They were young, but they were not weak. They were peaceful, but they were not passive. And most importantly, they would not be controlled. The ship accelerated away from Cytherian. Elias looked out the viewport as the glittering world disappeared behind him. He knew the next phase would be harder. Earth now had to decide whether to help, refuse, or prepare for a conflict. But one thing was certain. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and now they understood the truth. Humans chose their own destiny. Elias' heart returned to Earth, and the news of the confrontation spread faster than anyone expected. Every major network across the planet talked about the diplomatic incident. Many citizens were shocked. Some were proud. Others were worried that angering a powerful interstellar empire might bring danger to Earth. But one thing united most of the public. Humanity did not want to be used without choice. When Elias stepped off the landing platform inside Earth's Space Defense Headquarters, military officers and government officials waited. They saluted him, though some looked tense. He walked through the wide steel corridors until he reached the council chamber. There, the leaders of Earth's united government, scientific advisors, and military strategists were already gathered. The High Chancellor spoke first. "Envoy Hart, you acted with courage, but now we must decide what our next step is." Her tone was calm, but everyone could feel the pressure. The future of humanity might depend on what they decided today. General Marcus Hale, head of planetary defense, leaned forward. The Sithari may react in several ways. Best case, they accept the diplomatic delay. Worst case, they send warships to force compliance. Another council member shook their head. "We must not assume the worst. Their leader, Princess Vishara, appears reasonable." Elias listened quietly before speaking. "They are desperate. Their species is facing extinction. Some of them will think any method is justified." The scientific advisor added, "Their problem is real. If nothing is done, the Sithari could lose entire generations." Silence followed. This was not just a political issue. It was a moral one. Elias understood that. He did not want millions of lives to vanish. He just wanted fairness and choice. The High Chancellor folded her hands. "Elias, we need your personal recommendation. Should we help them?" Elias took a moment before answering. "Yes. But not like this. We need open talks, clear agreements, mutual benefit, not forced participation." Many heads nodded around the room. The Chancellor exhaled slowly. "Then we prepare a counterproposal. But while we negotiate, Earth must be ready to defend itself." Plans were made. Defense systems were activated. Diplomatic channels were prepared. Probes and listening stations across the solar system were put on alert. Humanity was sending a message. They wanted peace, but they would not be caught unprepared. That evening, Elias finally had time to rest. He returned to his small apartment overlooking the artificial lakes of New Geneva. Outside, people gathered in the streets, discussing the situation. Some chanted support. Some lit candles for peace. Humanity had never felt closer together. Elias watched them through the window, knowing his actions had changed much more than one treaty signing ceremony. He was tired, but he also felt something else resolve. He lay down to sleep. But then his AI implant signaled a priority call. He sat up instantly. Answer. A hologram appeared beside his bed. It was a military intelligence officer. "Envoy Hart. We have detected Sithari movements." Elias stood. "Hostile?" "That is unclear," the officer replied. "But a Sithari scout vessel has entered the outer edge of our solar system." Elias changed into his uniform and hurried back to headquarters. The main operations screen displayed the location of the incoming ship. It moved slowly. Not in attack formation. Commander Arya Nolan, who had brought Elias home, stood at the center of the room. "No weapons activated," she reported. "They are broadcasting a request to talk." The Chancellor nodded. "Put them through." A moment later, a familiar hologram appeared, Princess Vishara herself. She looked tired, as if she had been fighting political battles as difficult as Elias's. She bowed her head respectfully. "Earth leadership," she said calmly. "I come in peace. I am here without warships or threats. I hope we can repair what was damaged." Elias was surprised. "You came personally?" "Yes," Vishara replied. "My empire is divided. Some want to force cooperation. Some want to open negotiations. I came because I believe peace is still possible." The Chancellor studied her carefully. "If you truly want peace, then you must accept new terms. No more secrets. No forced agreements. No hidden conditions." Vishara nodded without hesitation. "I understand. And I agree." A wave of relief passed through the command center. Elias stepped forward. Then we begin honest talks. But the situation was not over. A sudden alarm sounded. Radar showed another signature entering the system. And this time it was different, fast, military, armed. Arya's voice hardened. Multiple warships, Scythari military fleet. They are not signaling peaceful intent. Vashara's expression changed to shock. No. They moved without authorization. She turned away sharply, shouting something urgent in her language at someone off-screen. Then she returned. Please listen to me. This is not an attack ordered by the throne. This is a faction acting on their own. The Chancellor narrowed her eyes. Regardless of who sent them, they are approaching Earth armed. That cannot be ignored. Elias felt the situation shifting toward disaster. If one side fired a single shot, a full war could begin. Vashara looked desperate. Give me access to your communication systems, she pleaded. I can contact their commander. If they hear my voice, they may stand down. Earth officers looked uneasy. Allowing a foreign diplomat access to their secure channels could be risky. But Elias stepped forward. This may be the only chance to avoid conflict. The Chancellor considered quickly, then nodded to the technicians. Vashara was connected to the incoming fleet. Her voice, calm but powerful, echoed through interstellar space. This is Princess Vashara of Scytherian. All warships stand down. This mission is unauthorized. Retreat immediately. There was a long pause. Everyone waited. The incoming fleet held position but did not turn back. Instead, a response came through. It was the same senior minister who had tried to arrest Elias during the ceremony. Princess, you are blinded by emotion, the minister said coldly. The humans humiliated our empire. If we show weakness now, our status collapses. We must proceed. Vashara stepped closer to the holo display, her voice firm. If you fire on Earth, you doom our species. You destroy any chance of cooperation. Stand down. But the minister was unmoved. We move forward. Alarms rang through Earth Command. Arya looked to the Chancellor. The room held its breath. Before anyone could speak, Elias stepped forward again. Put me through to their ship. The Chancellor hesitated, but then gestured for the connection to open. Elias faced the hostile commander directly. You want to save your people, Elias said calmly. So do we. But if you attack us, you lose everything. Earth will defend itself. The galaxy will witness the result. You will not find allies or sympathy. You will be remembered as the ones who turned hope into war. Silence followed. The minister glared through the projection. It was clear he hated being challenged again. But finally, he spoke. This is not over. The hostile fleet slowly began turning away. The tension in the command center dropped. Though no one relaxed fully, Vashara let out a long breath of relief. Thank you, she said. I will return to Scytherian and make sure this never happens again. The transmission ended. Earth's leaders exchanged looks. Elias leaned on the table, exhausted. The crisis had been stopped, but barely. The Chancellor placed a hand on his shoulder. Envoy Hart, you may have just prevented the first interstellar war. End. Envoy. 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 Elias did not answer right away. He looked out through the observation window at the stars. There would be more challenges ahead. The peace was fragile. Trust was new. But the door had been opened. For the first time since this began, Elias felt hope not just for Earth, but for both species. The future was uncertain. But humanity had taken a stand, and the galaxy had seen it.